Inspire Instructor Podcast, where the learning never stops. Welcome, you wonderful people, to another episode of Inspired Instructor Training Podcast. On today's episode, we welcome Carl, who is now an ADI. Carl comes on to tell us a story about the challenges on his journey to becoming a driving instructor. Carl's story is unique, however I feel like it will resonate with many PDIs or ADIs who've recently been through this story. So if you're struggling to get through your part 3 and you're maybe 2 attempts in, I'm hoping that Carl's story will resonate with you and give you inspiration to keep going and know that you can get there in the end. So just before we start the episode, I want to talk to you a little bit about Inspire Instructor Training. It seems like a lifetime ago since we launched on the 1st of January, and we've worked really hard in the last month and a half to create some quality courses, and we've put on some amazing Zooms, and we've been getting some great feedback from our members, and we just want to carry on providing excellent value and support to our members. So thank you to everyone who's listening who's already signed up. If you're considering signing up and want some support with your CPD, then please get in touch via either Facebook, or you can visit us at inspireinstructortraining.com. As podcast listeners, I just wanted to point out to you a feature that we have for our members. So all of our courses and Zoom sessions are available on a members-only podcast feed. So if you enjoy getting your content and CPD via podcast, which I'm guessing you do listening to this, then that could be a great way for you to add to your CPD without being too much of an effort or taking too much time out of your day. So yeah, give that a consideration. And again, if you have any more questions about that, please do get in touch. Enjoy the show. So welcome to Inspire Instructor Training Podcast. Today is going to be a slightly different episode. We're not going to have a trainer on, and we aren't going to be talking about a competency, but we're going to sort of kind of delve into a ADI story, which obviously previously PDI and their story and journey to becoming a driving instructor. We did this one last season as well, and I think it's just interesting to have these stories because it helps you guys relate to, because everyone's story is slightly different, but there's also a lot of similarities within that. So I'd like to welcome Carl onto the podcast to tell us his story. So welcome, Carl.
Hello.
So Carl, yeah, obviously we're telling me a little bit about this before we started recording, but yeah, do you want to just sort of tell us your story, and I'll jump in as necessary with maybe some questions that I have, but yeah, tell us your story and how you became an ADI.
Right, well, it started in my 20s, like I said before. I was wanting to be a driving instructor for quite a long time, and it was in my early 20s. I took up a franchise I was going to take up a franchise with a firm called Past Masters a very long time ago. And I joined the training. I did the first in-class training day, and my life just decided it was going to throw a massive curveball. It didn't happen. And here I am in my 50s. So that happened. Then I was working for a local council, and I was in that job for the best part of 15 years, working with learning disabilities and challenging behaviour. And I ended up in a bit of a legal battle with them over certain things, which I'd not bother mentioning. But so driving instructor flagged up in my head straight away. Right, this is what I want to do. Bit of a risk, so I was coming out of a fully paid job, good pension, holiday pay, and all that sort of stuff. And I just thought, well, if you're not willing to take risks, you're never going to get anywhere. So I actually contacted a large national school, which mixed reviews really on what happened really, because I went for my part 1 and I passed that immediately, which I absolutely shocked myself with, because I didn't really spend that much time revising. what I did was, my brain, I think I've got a bit of ADHD, to be fair, but my brain will not allow me to over-revise. Do you know what I mean? Or it will start to rebel and throw things out if I don't take it in sort of nice and easy. So, yeah, I didn't do much revising, and I came out with a really high score. I think it was something like 98 or something like that. I can't remember what it was. So when I come out of the building, I was literally like shocked. I thought, yes, this is the way forward. So then you get a bit brave, don't you? And you're thinking, right, I'll be all right, won't I? I'll get through this pretty quick. And I'd sort of picked the intensive course, which was meant to be done over a few months, and managed to spread that out over 2 years. So, yeah, past that, I went in for my part 2, and I think one of my trainers had mentioned along the way that every now and again, when you're under pressure, that your brain will decide it's going to kick something out that you normally do, and it's not going to do it that day. So on that day, now, can you imagine somebody who's going for the part 2 and they pull away from the curb 5 times without looking over the shoulder? That was me. That I decided that day I was going to do that. And I've been driving since 1983. There's absolutely no way I pull away from the curb. I've never had an accident yet. I've never had any points in my license. That day, my brain just decided it was going to, throw one at me. And the other side of it, I had 2 minors, and the examiner, she's a lovely lady, actually see her most days now. She said, what could be the cause of that? Why was that happening? I said, I've absolutely no idea. It must just be that little thing where I'm under pressure and brain's just decided it's not going to do something one day. But 5 times in a row. Anyway, failed it. So the next test that came up for the part 2, I was looking around for one. And obviously you've got to think of, when you're on the pink license and you're thinking, I've only got so long. I think they expect to do it within 3 months, don't they, or something like that. So I couldn't find anywhere to take me part 2. There was no test coming up. And then I found one in a place called Northwich. Now, it's probably around about an hour from where I live. I've never even knew the place existed. So it was like, I really want to take my test in an area that I don't know. So I went down there, I had a bit of a drive around. I thought, well, it's a lovely place. But I don't know the roads. No matter how nice the place is. If you don't know the roads, you don't know the roads. So I thought, well, I ain't got a choice. I went and I came away with 2 minors and a fail because I literally went onto a drop curb like that much on my reverse parallel park. Great guy. He was like so gutted for me, but he just said, I can't, So I said, right, okay. I'm thinking, oh my God, one more go. Here we go. Again, Northwich came up. I couldn't get anywhere near where I live in Tameside. And I passed 2 minors. There seemed like, this thing going on with the minors. And each time those 2 minors came up, by the way, they were all different minors. So it wasn't something that I needed to work on. It was just 2 minors. But so I came where, and that relief coming back and driving to drive an hour with that relief, thinking, right, come on now. Do you know what I mean? Let's get some training in now. Let's get to that part 3. Now, obviously, when the part 3 came up,
can I pause you there before we move on to?
That's okay.
I just have a few questions about what you've gone through there. So you said about way back. You said about before you started this journey that you previously dealt with people with learning disabilities. Have you found I know we're going to talk about your process to becoming an instructor, but have you found in that process, or even now you are an instructor, that's helped, and if so, how? Having already
a lot, because I myself know that there are an untold amount of undiagnosed people out there. Do you know what I mean? I've never mentioned that to them. It's not my place to do that, but you can recognise the traits in it, having dealt with various levels of mild autism to full on non-verbal. So yeah, And I started to pick up on just a few, and I'm thinking, it's there, I can see it. So I knew how to deal with that. That's fine, and people who are losing the cool or couldn't quite get something, or having a problem retaining, a skill. So it did help a lot in that way, a hell of a lot, and it's obviously it still does. I can go on.
Is it something you've considered maybe specializing in now you've sort of qualified and going into, or not?
I thought about it. I thought about it when, sort of thinking about business wise. I think I do advertise as fully trained in autism because I am, but I don't know legally if I'm allowed to do that outside my CPD regarding autism, because when in role for that job, we were consistently doing e-learning and classroom learning to keep our qualifications updated. So I'm not sure. I mean, I could say to people, look, if there are any issues, if you have anybody who's slightly autistic in the family or anything like that, then I am fully aware of how that works and I can help, rather than advertising it as that. But I thought about it, and I do have, I'd say, 3 or 4 clients that are very obviously,
Yeah,
having issues in that area.
You have a unique background and set of skills there that would be really helpful within the industry. So it's obviously something, yeah, I would consider that if I was you, like to making it a bit more of a niche and become the expert in that field, sort of kind of thing. I think it's quite interesting to sort of kind of do that. I know there's an instructor local to me who came from a background of supporting people with disabilities, and she has gone into and made that her niche after maybe a couple of years of getting her like an instructor sort of kind of stuff under the belt and really getting to grips with the skills of being an instructor, and then made it a niche and stuff. Yeah, because I think that if that's something you enjoy doing as well, it's absolutely. I wanted to just ask you about the intensive thing as well. So I think I probably have 2 questions. One, what made you choose the intensive? Because I'm just intrigued by the mindset of that. And then also, how did you find it?
Well, what made me choose it was I needed a very quick way out. And obviously, we all need to earn a bit of money to put food on the table. So it was based on I need to get out of here quickly. So I need to be able to land into a job. Other than that, I'm going to end up working somewhere like IKEA or something, which I didn't mind, to be fair. I thought, I'm in my 50s. I could quite easily go and, push a few wardrobes around on a pallet truck or whatever. But, when you set your mind on something, yeah. So the intensive didn't quite work out as I thought it would because of the test times regarding, like the DVSA having problems with, all this going on. But, I don't think that was considered enough, to be fair, with PDIs. And I think that a lot of people were being put under unnecessary stress, thinking that they weren't going to get the next badge when the DVSA were the ones that were cancelling the tests in the first place, and things like that. So it wasn't quite what I expected. The training itself was also not what quite I expected. I expected it to be really, really difficult and really had to get my head around it. I was challenging myself in a big way, Philip, really. I was sort of saying to myself, look, you might think that you can't retain information, lots of information, and be good enough at retaining it that you'll be able to pass it on correctly to, your clients. But I thought, if I don't take this on as, look, if this is difficult, then it's meant to be difficult. There's a lot to learn. But what I was finding with my training was the guy that was training me, he was a gentleman, absolute gentleman, really nice guy. But I just felt it wasn't quite there. And so I started questioning it sort of in a group of other national school PDIs or ADIs who were mentioning things about the training that I've never even heard of. So I was starting to question it, then thinking, but I've not done that. So I was asking questions, and the more I asked questions, the more I was getting this, hang on a minute, why have I not aware of this? So, and that's when the part three came up, the first part three, because I'd already booked it. So it was like I mentioned before, earlier, it was a case of it's there. If you pass it, it's a bonus. If you don't, then you're going to learn from it. So yeah, I think the training itself, up to that point, I was questioning it, but didn't do anything about it until after my first part three.
I just want to go for you. So you wanted some experience from this first part three. So how did that part three go? And what did you gain from it?
I think I gained quite a lot from it, really. One was insight into how much I really didn't know, or what I wasn't actually putting into practice, or what I was getting, or what. I mean, this is the first part one.
Yeah, the first part three.
Because I've not done the extra training. Yeah, yeah. So the first part one, the first attempt at part three was, the client was absolutely great. She was having troubles with speed on approach. It was mainly at roundabouts, but we're going to call it speed and approach anyway. But and on the day, with the routes that we chose, she decided to drive like a pro. So nothing was going wrong. I mean, literally nothing was going wrong. I did one loop of and then, but it's that thing where I'm thinking, right, I'm going to ask her how she's doing, how she thinks she's doing. Shall we move on? But this client just kept saying, just one more loop. I just want to do that again, right? By the time that had done, I literally had about 15 minutes left. I tried to get down to some major roundabouts for speed and approach. We got there. We managed to go around 2 roundabouts. By the time we got back, it was one of them where you see a lesson where it was completely flatline. Nothing was eventful. And the vibe in the car was, what was all that about? What did I pay all that money for? You know what I mean? It was just flat. And the lady the examiner that took me out, she was absolutely lovely. And she actually took me out for my final part three. She was absolutely lovely. And she gave me some very, very honest feedback. It was quite humorous, actually, because she was saying to me, I was talking too much. When she was coming up to this junction, why didn't you? I said, let me just stop you there. I said, are you trying to tell me just to shut the fuck up? And she went, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. So I sort of get that now. Do you know what I mean? So I sort of took that on board. So yeah, I gained from it that I was talking too much and over-instructing. I was just over-instructing.
Sounds like classic PDI material there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just in there all the time, never give it a break. My jaw was going all left, right, and centre, thinking that I had to fill these gaps in. That when things were going okay, I was talking about stuff that wasn't particularly relevant to the goal. So it was basically me thinking that I didn't want any silence in the car. I wanted learning to be wherever possible. Like for instance, I'm going down a side road and it curves off to the left, and I'm asking my client, what could she look out for, for a clue that something may be coming around that corner. And apparently it wasn't needed because she was doing fine. And I sort of get that now. So some of my clients now, since they're like, what's up with you? Why are you so quiet in the car? I'm saying, because you're doing okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's helped me to step right back. I'm stop mothering people. That's what it's helped me do. And I can see a difference in the learning curve of the clients because of it. And so this client-centered thing, and also I am on board with the client-centered sort of thing, is, because that was my background, but a very different experience in the car. But I'm on board with it and I agree with it. I like it. I like that way of getting that knowledge out of them first. What do you know now? Because I'm not going to tell you what you already know. That's it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking that's definitely the way forward.
When you see that realization as well of what they do know when you shut up and what they can achieve when you shut up and get out of the way, it makes the lessons, I think, more enjoyable and rewarding as well, because I find it more rewarding watching a pupil come up with a solution and develop it themselves and put it into practice. And I'm just there sort of kind of nudging them along because they find it more rewarding. So I find it more rewarding. Like they've achieved this. Whereas if I did all the work and said, do this and I'll talk you through it and all of that sort of stuff, it's like who's really achieved that? Like who's and so I do think, yeah, I quite often am talking to PDIs about and ADOs about talking less, don't work so hard. And I do think there's an element of me doing this that I think I'm quite good at this because whatever I do in life, I'm always trying to find the easiest way to do it. And so I think there's an element, it takes a bit of skill, but it's an element of my laziness kicking in, going, I don't want to work really hard. You do the work. Not less over the responsibility to the learner. But it was interesting listening to you talk there, how you were sort of kind of explaining how now you do that, you see how your pupils develop even more. And I think there is quite often that light bulb moment in the journey where you go, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to. And mothering was a really good word. Actually, I've had one of my ADI examiners explain that to one of my PDIs. After the things, it's like they said to stop mothering them um, on the lesson. The other word they've used is puppeteering, where they're saying you're basically like the puppet master in the car. And I think it's the phrases that they're using because we try and do too much, and sometimes that comes from nerves, I would say. Like
Yes.
it can come from nerves, and you want to, like you were talking about how you wanted to show yourself and didn't want those silences and like look what I know sort of kind of thing, and that's
Yeah.
not what they're
That's
looking.
what it came across. And funnily enough, that's what the examiner was part of the comments afterwards was, you know, she said, I'll give you one thing. You're very good at showing us what you do know. Yeah.
Yeah,
But not what the client knows. That's, you need to look at it the other way around. And obviously, because that's when the questioning of my training came in, because because of I can't say lack of training, or can I? I don't know. What I can say is that having sort of looked around at the various information and misinformation on the internet, it's very easy to get sucked down either hole. So unfortunately, originally I was sucked down the wrong hole. I was just basically going down the misinformation route of just get out there, show me your skills, blah, blah, blah. It's nothing like that. I think what I also got from it was when you talked about the light bulb moment for clients is that light bulb moment is sometimes it's like the pass result on a test. It's a big moment for some people. Do you know what I mean? And that in itself makes your job more interesting because you're getting a lot more from your clients, and you're more on an equal basis, like a team, rather than I'm the teacher, you're watching what I'm going to tell you what to do. Because if you're on an equal basis with somebody, you've got that. You're a teamwork. You're working things out together. Find out what you know, what I know, and we'll put them together and see what works. And that to me is invaluable in a teaching and a learning environment, to be on that level. Now, my learning curve for autism was, don't try and force somebody with autism to understand your world. Go and understand theirs. Immerse yourself in their world, and then slowly and help slowly show them yours. Do you know what I mean? And that's basically what I try and do in the car. Now, whether or not it's going to be helpful on the SC, I don't know, but we'll soon find out, won't we?
you're 100% right. And actually, I have mentioned this quite a few times this season on the podcast, and I appreciate people listening to this. This is one of the earlier episodes, but you're going to hear this in a few times as we go along. How what you were talking about with autism there, and you're talking about like get into their world and then like gradually meet somewhere in the middle. I believe that's the case for all of your pupils, like special educational needs or not. Like everyone is individual, and so whoever your pupil is, get into their mind, get into their world. How do they learn? How do they want to interact with this learning process? And then find that space in the middle, or just go their way, sort of kind of thing. And I think that's the key. Like we talk about maybe some special techniques for special educational needs and the way you need to do it. But what works for special educational needs works for everyone, because what you're doing when you're dealing with special educational needs is you're dealing with that person's specific needs, but everyone
Yes.
has specific needs.
Yes.
And they just happen to be different specific needs. And so, yeah, what works for that's clientele works for everyone. And I think that should just be your approach for every person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, you bang on. You know what I mean? But I'm not saying it's took me a while to sort of understand that. I think because look, I'm come from an environment where I'm not really teaching people, but whereas this is literally one-to-one in car, and I'm expected to give value for money. Do you know what I mean? And that in itself can be a huge weight on you if you're not getting it right.
So should we move on to so you've been and had your extra 20 hours, which has helped and boosted your knowledge a little bit, but you've now not got time to put this into place and you're under pressure now. How did your second part 3 attempt then go?
Yeah. Wow. Well, anyway, I did the 20 hours, and I literally had, I think it was five weeks before my next test. So I'm thinking, right, just knuckle down. I have all my notes and everything. I'm terrible at taking notes, Phil. I'm absolutely dreadful at taking notes. I'm not academic in any way. I've always been a hands-on person. So for me to study anything, it's got to be from in here rather than on paper.
Yeah,
so it's, I can remember things very easily. If I try and force it into sort of studying in a conventional way, it doesn't work for me. It just doesn't. So I just don't do it. So did the 20 hours, had 5 weeks, tried my best to implement it. I was going through that scenario where we're horrified at which client we're going to choose. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, oh, bloody hell, I really don't know what to do. Started whittling it down. I had about 3 that I could think of. Then it came to the fact where one of them had said they couldn't do it for whatever commitments they had. Boiled it down to one person. And she was great. She was a lady in her 50s. She'd always wanted to drive. All she wanted, her dream was to be able to ferry her grandkids around everywhere. And I said, come on, let's go and do it. Do you know what I mean? We'll get you on the road. Brilliant client. Very, very nervous client. Very nervous, but it started to dissipate quite a lot over the space of, the few months that was teaching her.
I want to ask you how you whistled it down to those 3. Like what was going through your mind choosing your pupils? Like how were you trying to make that decision?
Yeah, I was trying to find somebody that I had. I mean, I've got a rapport with every single one of my clients. You know what I mean? Even if they're meek and mild when they get in the car and are a bit nervous, it takes a couple of weeks and I've got them out of the shell. Do you know what I mean? I just say, look, show me personality. Let's have some personality in the car. You know what I mean? It's a safe environment. Nobody's there to judge. Let's just get on with it. And you know what I mean? We'll get on great. So this lady was actually somebody that I knew anyway, outside the learning environment. And the thoughts behind it was I needed somebody who was very interactive, would ask questions, would answer questions easily, would respond to instruction quite easily. And just somebody who would give me that atmosphere in the car where it's relaxed, it's a good learning environment. She had a pretty good general drive. It was just the odd thing what really threw her. And it could have been through an experience in the past or whatever to do with roundabouts, maybe. Obviously, number one, she has a pretty good general drive. She wasn't going to light me a load of fires everywhere. She's chatty. She could be a bit nervous, but that would help me to show my skills in calming someone's nerves if I needed to. It just seemed to make sense. So, yeah, that's what we set out to do. It was a great setup. Went and picked her up. So, went to near the test centre, did about, I'd say, nearly an hour of practice, which was right turns at roundabouts. She was great at going straight ahead at roundabouts, good position, everything was in place. Just a little bit shaky, a bit nervy, tried to rush it a little bit too much here and there, but she got it down to a pretty good straight ahead at roundabouts, left turns at roundabouts, absolutely fine. When it comes to turning right at roundabouts, she just couldn't get it. So I think the forward thinking for her was once she got in her head that what she was about to do, the whole MSPSL routine just got chucked straight out the window. So on the approach to, say, this roundabout, she couldn't quite get the gist of moving over to the right. I'm going to put it down. There must have been something happened in the past somewhere. Maybe she was a passenger in a car, that maybe an accident. I don't know. And so as soon as I gave the instruction, okay, at the roundabout, I'd like to turn right, third exit. The nerves kicked in. She couldn't move the car over far enough. She'd end up being more central rather than to the right. She hadn't been looking in the mirrors. She hadn't indicated. She wasn't slowing down enough. It was just the whole thing went out the window. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? How come she can do this and that, but not that? I've got to try and break it down. So we did a couple of loops, and I spoke to her outside the test centre and just said, look, what do you want me to do here? And she said, when we set off, Carl, I'd just like you to just do one loop of those 3 roundabouts, the small estate roundabouts with 4 exits on each one. And just one loop, let me get to grips with it. And then if you want, and then ask me if I'm going to be all right doing, like, move on to prompted, I'll start asking questions rather. So I said, okay, that's what we'll do. And this person walks out and she just said, can I see your badge, please? And I thought, bloody hell, I left it in the car. Right. So I went, okay, sorry, I left it in the car. And it was an instant response was, well, I do need to see it. So I went, okay, I'll go and get it. So I'm thinking she's really impatient. You know what I mean? The walls are up already and I'm not getting a good vibe here. It's not really setting me up for a good atmosphere. So I run to the car. Now I'm 56 years old, Phil, and I smoke, right? So running 100 metres to the car and then running back again. So when I got back in there, I'm already drying up. So my mouth had gone all dry. I was absolutely knackered. I couldn't breathe properly. I just give it, and then she's trying to bombard me with questions, and I couldn't speak because I couldn't get my breath. Anyway, so it gets outside, and she asked me what the lesson was, and I said it's right turns at roundabouts. And that we were going to start off on fully guided, as that's what my clients asked me to do, because she's too nervous and she just wants to do a loop or so with the fully guided, and then we're going to hopefully move on to prompted, and hopefully by the end of the lesson we'll achieve maybe an independent right turn at a roundabout. Let me just stop you there. You cannot do this on this test. You cannot start this test on fully guided. That will be seen as a new subject, and we do not cover new subjects on this test. I went, well, that's not what I've been trained. She went, oh, that's not my problem. You'll have to take that with your trainer if you've got a problem. So I said, well, okay, so what am I supposed to tell my client that I've already agreed, and we're going to run through this when I get in the car, obviously, that I've already agreed that's what we're going to do. That's not my problem. As I said, if you've got any issues, let's take it up with the trainer. Your job is to get in the car and let your client know what's happening. So my brain's going all over the place thinking, have I been trained wrong? Is it me that's got the training wrong? I'm sure I'm right. Why is she telling me that I can't do this? Set up completely to fail, in my eyes, completely. Get in the car, and I said to my client, after she'd introduced herself, I said, Tracy, you know what we talked about on the way, and when we pulled up, about you wanting to do, fully guided for a loop? She went, yeah, that's what I want. I said, how do you feel about me maybe starting off unprompted? Oh my God, no. A hand came on her chest like that. No, I can't do that. Can we just go with that one loop, please, at first, and I'll let you know how I feel after that. So I could see my client's face filling up. She was almost purple. She'd gone into that mode of, I'm now losing it because we had agreed on this. And it just went absolutely, I can only describe it as that common tits up, completely, absolutely tits up. Ass over tit for about 50 years. It just went on and on. Come out of the test centre, went to a left turn junction. Now, this left turn junction it's quite, I wouldn't say infamous, but it's a bit of a learning curve for people to take. It's a left turn, and it goes into it's a very sharp left turn, and it immediately goes into 2 lanes, and then immediately after that there's a merge. Right, so came around the corner, and I explained to Tracy, we're going to be turning right at the next turn right. Now, the car had already tried to start to overtake her. Now, because of that, she moved straight over to the curb, right over, and then another car came round, yeah, and then she'd lost it. I couldn't get away from the curb. So eventually we got it guided over. She floundered her way through this right turn, which was a feed lane, you know, like a separate lane. Pulled up, discussed that. And I just thought straight away, this is an absolute fucking nightmare. This is a fail anyway. Do you know what I mean? So from bad to worse. It was just horrendous. I thought, right, I'm going down this fully guided. I'm not giving a monkey's what this one wants him back. I'm not putting my client through this. She's already lost it completely because of what I said to her. Did the roundabouts, fully guided. It was okay. We came around back to the junction that we'd originally turned left at. It's like a loop. So you turn left, do the estate roundabouts, come back round, turn right at the same lights, back into that same loop. Now, this traffic lights is where you've got the priority right turn arrow. And we've been through that loop a few times before the test itself. And I said, just make sure you're keeping your eye out for that arrow. Yeah, because when that arrow goes off, those cars, there's going to be a slight delay, but they're going to start coming at you. She knows about all this. She's done right turns at traffic lights so many times. I wouldn't have took her otherwise. So I realised there was the biggest lorry I've ever seen in my life was right behind us. So as we moved into the junction to turn right, the arrow just went off. Just bang on time. You know, and you're thinking, you bastard, why have you just done that right now? Even though I'm thinking she'll be fine. So she juddered, she'd got the car in the wrong gear, and she was reluctant to move forward, and then thought, no, I'll go for it. But then by that time, the cars had already come at us. So I'd slammed the brakes on. It was a case of be it by that or be it that. I don't know what was going to get hit by. Something was going to hit us. If not the examiner from the back with a clipboard, you know. And then the meltdown happened where she had a foot on the clutch and the brake and wouldn't bring the foot off either. She just lost the whole plot. So I'm battling with her, and this examiner sat in the back, and her head's spinning round because this juggernaut nearly hit us from behind. Her head's spinning round like her off The Exorcist, and I'm sat and trying to get this woman to take her feet off the pedals so I can get us out of the junction. We eventually got her out of it after all these cars coming at us from all directions. I managed to get the car over to the side of the road, pulled into a side road, and I ended the test myself.
Okay.
I just said, I'm not putting you through anymore. I said, it's obviously gone completely wrong. And I said, do you feel safe to drive? And she said, yeah, I feel I can maybe drive back. So I don't mind driving if you want. The test ends here. You know what I mean? I'm fine with that. So she chose to drive, got back to the test centre. Now, this is where I was going to take the fail on the nose, to be fair. Apart from being set up at the beginning, which I thought I was. I just thought that's wrong. You shouldn't be treating people like that who are nervous anyway. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm about to take a test. You should be making me feel as comfortable as possible. And you know that if it's possible that I can pass it, then I can pass it because the environment that you're creating.
Yeah.
So I do believe. So at the end, the examiner from the back addressed Tracy, my client, and just said, well, first of all, Trace, I'd like to thank you for being here today. Not a lot of people like doing this, and sometimes they back down or pretend to be poorly. So I'd just like to thank you for that. And then she said, and this is where my mouth just dropped. I was like, pushed Tracy on the shoulder, which I thought was a bit weird. And she just said, and I don't want you to think any mistakes that have happened today are down to you. It's more likely down to your level of training. So I just sat there and I had to look away. I just looked out the passenger window and thinking, don't say anything, Carl, because I'd normally pick me up by the throat. And, just like, I don't know what the fuck. Why would you say that? She got out of the car and I got out with her, and I was trying to take in the feedback, but because of what had just happened, felt like a really bad dream powered by some really uneatable cheese. Then I was just thinking, I couldn't take it in, the feedback. She went through for about 20 minutes. She went through the entire 17 core competencies, which I appreciated. I appreciate you giving me good feedback, but what part did you play in this? What part did you play in this going so wrong? This is what I was thinking in my head. She just said, you clearly haven't been trained. You need more training. Well, I do appreciate that. I said, but I'm trying to say, when was at the beginning of the test when I was talking to you outside the car, I said to you what I was going to be doing. And she went, let me just stop you there. As I've said to you, I've not got time for this. If you've got a problem with anything that's happened today, then consult your trainers. So I felt like I was robbed of that attempt. That's what I felt like.
Yeah. I, I I want to clarify to anyone listening that you can absolutely do full talk through. They don't want. I agree they don't want to. So the word's partly trained, but partly trained just means they effectively don't want you sat on the side of the road digging
Yeah.
into a new topic. But you've already explained that you'd already done right turns with this person. So, right turns at the roundabouts. And actually, even if you're doing right turns for the first time, it's not necessarily brand new because they've done roundabouts and left turns and straight ons. And so anybody's like, you can argue partly trained for a lot of things because even if you're doing roundabouts for the first time, they're partly trained because they've done junctions and they've done MSPSL. Like for me, a roundabouts for the first time isn't necessarily a sat at the side of the road talking about it anyway. I think I would have a conversation before I went to the part 3, but then off we go, sort of kind of thing. And no, you can. And it's, I think probably the shame there is kind of like you said, they should be creating an environment that enables you to be at your best because you're not nervous. And actually, we locally we have a really good ADI examiner who does that. He puts you at ease. He's a little bit jokey, but serious at the same time. Like, they've got a serious job to do, and his feedback's always really good. And so I think you can do that job in a certain way, I think is the key. And so it sounds like you had a poor experience. But let's move on to, well, you're an ADI now, so spoiler alert, let's move on to the good one. So what happened between the disaster, we'll call it, we'll call it the stolen test.
Yeah, great.
And
Fantastic experience.
and then this part 3. So did you seek further training before we get to that one?
Yeah, I initially contacted Claire Wilmot, not just because of the book, because I got the book, but I was like, she's got a good reputation in the industry, so I was like, great. I contacted her. She quickly got back to me, and we had a conversation on the phone. But because of her commitments and the space of time that I had, she couldn't guarantee that, to give me a decent number of hours in the car. So I said, well, okay, so that she could give me, a couple of maybe a session. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to do training, I'd rather do it with one person, consistent. So I'm not getting conflicted. So I said, do you know of anybody? And she put me on to Lee Jowett. And Lee got back to me, and I did 3 sessions, 3 2-hour sessions with Lee. And the minute that I met Lee, actually before I even met him, he got out of the car, and as soon as I saw Lee, I thought, he's quirky. He's going to be my type of person. Do you know what I mean? Knew straight away. I thought, his character there. Do you know what I mean? And he was just great. Big beaming smile on the bloke, and do you know what I mean? And on his feedback, fantastic, brilliant guy. Out of the box thinking from the word go. Do you know what I mean? And it really opened me up to that. And when he started talking about things like within the GDE matrix, and I was like, sort of really resonate with that. I really like, that sort of really looking into what was your feeling? How are you, what you're feeling, and that your attitude affects the way that you drive. You know what I mean? The way that Lee was talking, I really instantly resonated with that. And I took on a lot of what he said immediately, because I thought, yes, I was actually thinking right there, and thinking like, even down to the sort of job that you do, can you relate it? I use a lot of analogies in the car, and some of them are out of the box. And I think Lee gave me that go ahead, that's okay to do.
Yeah. I think it's remembering that when that person gets in the car, they come with, like you said, 17 years of their experiences. So when we're trying to have a conversation about a certain whatever incident that's happened, you've got to remember that they're seeing it through their 17 years of experience's eyes, not yours. And so that's why it's so important to be getting into their mind and into their thoughts and their feelings, because it will be different to how they experience that roundabout is completely different to how you just experience that roundabout. And so, and in all fairness, your experience doesn't matter. Theirs does.
Yeah.
So it's about having a conversation about their experience in that situation. And you can't do that without asking them questions about what's going on in their head. And I quite often sit in the back of lessons and I'm begging for that information. I'm like, I have no idea what this pupil's thinking right now. And when I'm sat next to a pupil teaching them, that's all I'm thinking is somebody described it the other day as like being a detective. And it's something I've always done ever since I started, as thought of it. This whole job is like being a detective. You're looking for clues and hunting for information. And if you're a detective and had a person sat next to you, you'd be trying to get into their mind and find out what they were thinking.
And then trying to stop the next crime while you're still doing that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's very, very similar to that. So shall we move on to your final part 3? What went well?
Yes, final part 3. The client that I chose, I definitely knew it was going to be him. I knew it was going to be him all along. He was almost test ready. Apart from the fact that he was just a bit of a rebel with his mirrors. Once he got comfortable in his car and knew that he had absolutely no problem in moving that car about, wherever I asked him to put it, he put it. It was fine, great. But he just kept falling away with his mirrors, and I couldn't have picked a better client. He was just amazing, and because it was effective use of mirrors, that's what I was sort of looking at. And having talked to Lee about it, he come up with some ideas about, because Gabe, the guy that I talk, he is very easily distracted. He likes to talk a lot. Yeah. And when he talked, he just forgot parts of his MSPSL, i.e. mirrors and things like that. So I was trying to sort of shut him up a little bit when it comes to right, I want you to concentrate, because we're just in respect to give you an instruction. Okay. Right. So Lee was saying, well, use it against him. Use the distraction against him. See how he copes with distraction. And I did exactly that. And I thought, bloody hell, why didn't I think of that? Do you know what I mean? It was like when he was coming up to doing something, I'd just suddenly distract him. And that can be sort of a bit conventional. But I think if I thought he wouldn't have been able to handle it, or maybe crashed because I'd done it, then I probably wouldn't have gone down that route. There was this one particular roundabout, and it's a small spiral roundabout. Now, it's just infamous because nobody gets it right. It's just one of them roundabouts where you just think, why don't you just fucking redesign it? You know what I mean? It's an abomination. And I guided Investicored, and, he was all right on it. I didn't think it was going to come up to the test, to be fair, on his test or anything like that. It was like, he got it okay. It was just, the position was a little bit off. But everybody that goes on the roundabout has got the positions a bit off. There's something weird about it. It's like a vortex where nobody can drive. So we were just coming up to it. I never said a word. I just let him get on with it. And then just as I was about to sort of, the bit where he normally fucks it up, I just turned the radio up. And this music came on. And you know what? At that moment, he did that roundabout better than any other time he'd ever done it. Because I think he was being forced into overthinking it, because it had just been one of them, things, what was a common, was just a given that I'm going to fuck this up. So when I distracted him, just at the right time, the whole thing just went I was like, wow. So cheers, Lee. Do you know what I mean? Like, that actually worked there. Anyway, so that client, he was fantastic. On the test itself, we started off on prompting. I'd explained to the examiner, I just said, look, he's near test ready. He's got a really good general drive on him. His test is coming up in a few weeks, and I just want to really make sure that he's in there with the mirrors and, and a reason to look in those mirrors, not just robotically. We've been through this scenario a few times. I'm just trying to drill it back. She let me get on with it, basically. And I made sure that I got out of that initial practice area, I thought, Lee said, just take him around the estate once, pull up, discuss something, how is it going, see where you need to take it from there. He said, but just get in there, give it a bit of an easy start, and then get out there. Don't delay, get out there and make it more difficult. Do you know what I mean? Put him in a full-on, town centre situation, which was easily done for that claim. And it was great. But the one thing that he did do, which I was hoping he was going to do, was give me a reason to adapt. Because he was such a good driver, I thought, is he going to give me that adapt thing? Otherwise, it could prove to be pretty difficult to sort of keep that flow. Do you know what I mean? And
well, I would argue that if it's going well, you would still adapt, because you'd go, this is going really well, I need to make it even more challenging. So your adapting doesn't have to be because a mistake has happened. It can absolutely be because it's going well.
I'll agree with you there. I mean, obviously, I'm going to agree with you that, because obviously when it was going well for that first loop, and I said to him, let's get down to the town centre, let's go. And the Stockport town centre in the mornings is horrendous. You know what I mean? We've got a massive, big, infamous roundabout there called the Portwood. It's a huge spiral roundabout with 4 lanes on it, 3 lanes in, 4 lanes on, 2 lanes coming off. Great big, huge thing. So we did all that section, all the weird roundabouts and all the complex junctions. But he did something that I thought, oh, thank fuck, he's just done that, which was he tried to pull out on a very small roundabout at a very busy shopping centre and didn't see the car coming from the right. So I duelled him. Well, initially, on the way in, I knew his speed was out because I thought, he's not even seen this.
Mm-hmm.
So verbally first, yeah. And he just wasn't quick enough, so I duelled him. We found somewhere to pull up, discuss the whole thing. And because it was more of a one-off for him, it was more like asking him what he was thinking, why, because of that's not what he normally does. What was, where was his head at when he was doing it? So I said, let's go back. Yeah. And what his answer to me was, he said that roundabout, he went, there's there's never anybody around there. He said, I just weren't expecting that to come around the corner. So I said, well, there we are. I said, we can get complacent around the corner from our own home, thinking that we know it. We don't know what's going to happen. We never do. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So let's go back. And he just did it perfectly. Then I made sure that we went to another busier roundabout after that to make sure that he had, it wasn't just displaying that. I lost points there because the examiner actually explained to me and she said, his comment about the fact that there's never anybody on that roundabout. So I went, yeah. She went, why did you take him back to just that one?
That's exactly what I was thinking. The second you said it, that was exactly what I would, if that happened to me, and this is more for other people because you've gone and done it. If that happened to me, I would jump on that comment and drive around, going and asking him what is he not expecting to happen, and then expect it to happen. And I think I would make that entire lesson about the stuff that might happen that doesn't happen very often. And go hunting for that, because experienced drivers, that's what we do. I think experienced drivers do fall into that trap. And you're right about the being at home and no one ever comes around the corner. There's a junction in my house that I come down and people cut the corner because hardly anyone's ever there. But I'm there every time I go down that road, just because not many people do. So I get that experience a lot. And it's just interesting that it happens, but then. So experienced drivers fall into that trap. I think instructors don't, because we see it more, and so we now do expect those sort of kind of things to happen. And it's about having those conversations about going hunting for the unexpected, which then makes it not the unexpected anymore, which is really, really good. Just before we carry on, I want to jump back to your distraction chat, actually, because that's something really interesting that I do regularly with my pupils as well. I remember somebody talking to me about asking me a question about a pupil who talks too much, and sounds similar to your pupil, is just a chatter, and they're like, how do I shut him up? And I'm like, don't, because if they're chatting to you that much, when they get in the car with their friends, they're going to talk that much in the car. So if you teach them to be silent, you're not training them to drive in these conditions that they're going to drive post-test. So what you need to train them to do is to learn to handle the distraction and learn when to shut up. And that's what I would do. I always talk about it as like pressing pause. And so train them to press pause on the conversation. And I've done this in the car. My wife wasn't too appreciated, where I've literally gone pause, done the roundabout. Okay, carry on. And you can sort of and because and it's about recognizing when you need to concentrate more and shutting your passengers up who maybe aren't drivers and maybe don't recognize the dangers or aren't seeing your sort of kind of need to concentrate. So I think that's what I would do, and I play games with them and stuff like that where we play. The ABC game's really good. I got this from playing with my kids, but where we like go through the alphabet naming movies that begin with A and then B and then C and then D because you have to think, and when you have to think, it affects your driving. Now I'm keeping them safe. Like you said this when you explained it that you were doing the job of keeping them safe. You weren't going to let them get dangerous, and that's what we do all the time in the car anyway. But I want to see what happens when they're distracted and they're thinking, like, how does it affect their driving? And then we can pull over and have a conversation about that and have a conversation around what other things when they pass their driving test are going to cause this level of distraction. And it might lead on to like mobile phone conversations or like you say, having friends in the car or having a heated argument in the car, something like that. And I think just that playing that game and letting them realize, and the radio is a good one as well, turn the radio up, like you said, letting them realize that there are going to be distractions in the car. If they've got kids, get the kids in the car, and tell the kids they can be as noisy as they like. That's always a good one. Um, they love that. Uh, and they and it just creates these real life scenarios. And then what we go do is hunt for the solutions to this because we don't want to leave them with, yeah, this is going to be a problem. You need the how are you going to get over this? How are you going to handle this in this situation? How are you going to deal with it? So yeah, I think that just I wanted to kind of jump on that because I don't think it's talked about enough. And I think anyone listening, it might be something that they might recognize in their pupils that they've maybe brushed over, or they've tried to do the how do I get my pupil to shut up? I'm trying to teach them to drive instead of, oh, actually, I'm going to use this because I think you're going to be like this after the test.
Yeah,
And
because
so
it will be. And not only that, the mates as well, because obviously these are young lads, young girls that are going in for the test. If they've got chances are within a few weeks they're going to have the mates out in the car. And the thing is, their mates are not going to shut up just because they're coming up to a junction or a roundabout somewhere. They're just going to carry on. Do you know what I mean? So it's important, I think, to have that real life situation within that training, obviously. And if you haven't got it, then you're in for a big shock afterwards because young kids like their friends in the car with them. And that's when the problems start, isn't it? You know?
I had a great experience taking my daughter up to uni. And she was driving while learning, and her friend was in the back, and her friend was like, can I plug my phone in to do the music? And the music was just all over the place. It wasn't even just the type of music. It was like we kept swapping from song to song, and that's distracting as a driver because you're like, oh, this new song, what's this song? And then I had to keep telling her to turn the volume down. And particularly as we're coming into like the busy areas, and I think that was just a really good experience for my daughter to one, realize her friend's a nightmare, and, and two, but experience that how to handle her in the car and say, look, I'm driving, I need to concentrate. Yes, you can play the music, but this is going to be the volume. Stop changing the song every 2 seconds. Let me concentrate. At some point, I might need to pause the music so I can concentrate. Like I deal with Honest Truth quite a lot, and they have little cards that are called My Rules, My Car, My Rules. And so I've given my daughter one of those, and that is one of the rules that ultimately she's in charge of it. Like if what she says goes, basically, no matter what's happening. So yeah, I think that's quite important when handling troublesome friends. So how did part 3 go?
Now, I did actually scrape through, Phil. I scraped through. And I don't know where I've lost points. I know where I lost points on that, but I should say I lost points for. And also, now I know my area pretty well. Brain fart. As we was coming back towards the test centre, I asked him to take the exit to the left, and it was the wrong one. We ended up in a service road for a German doner kebab.
Nice.
In the car park at the back. So thankfully, my client went, "Oh, it's all right. If we just nip round here, we can get out." He just got us out of there. And she said that had we not done that, I'd have probably got more points. I actually scraped through at 31. But that was enough for me. I was like instant. I mean, she suggested that I take up more training, which obviously I am in the midst of doing, and all the CPD. I'm listening to podcasts galore, yours and Terry's.
Josh does Mirror Signal podcast as well.
Joss as well. So I'm in between lessons. Those podcasts are on. Even the ones that I've already heard, I'm going back through all. I mean, Terry's got millions, so you can just go through them all. Eventually, you'll have millions. But
I've listened to all Terry's millions, so yeah.
They're great. They're absolutely fantastic. How you two find the time to do this is beyond me, but it's invaluable to me. I would suggest any PDIs or ADIs, obviously, for standard checks, is do not let these podcasts go over your head, because it's just it's a wealth of just endless entertainment, and with all those nuggets coming in where you think, I've learned so much, and how many things I've took from yours and Terry's podcast into the car just by hearing that one sentence. And Bob, Bob is he's just great, isn't he?
Yeah.
I listen to Bob that much that I'm starting to get a bloody accent.
No, Bob is great. I remember I was on a Zoom with him, Terry, and some other people the other day. And Bob started talking to someone in a coaching-y sort of kind of way, and asking them questions. And they just private messaged Terry as we were going, like, Bob's great, isn't he? Because he's just very good at that. And you don't get to see him do that very often, because he's normally just talking about like his experience. Yeah. You're not seeing the coaching side of him. And it was a masterclass in coaching for a few minutes, which was great.
It makes me laugh. I mean, I'm not even going to try and do his accent, but it's that sentence that he said quite a few times is, just go and do it. It's easy. I'm going, it's not that fucking easy. You know what I mean? But I think it's because he's got that down to earth bloke in the pub vibe about him. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's all great. And, on the seat, what I'm going to do is I'm looking at taking up, some maybe in-car CPD along with anything else. And of course, the signing up to the Inspire to sort of look at, because I was asking you about it, wasn't I, which would be better for standard checks and stuff like that, which part to sort of subscribe to.
Yeah. So I would recommend anyone to come and join Inspire Mentorship. So I love you've got that attitude that you haven't just passed and off you go, and you're going to carry on. And to be honest, that should never stop. Like I haven't stopped. I've been 17 years in, and I still constantly doing CPD and trying to improve. And I think that should, like, the second you stop trying to improve, I think you're done, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that highlighted for me because I got scraped through it. And I was like, I didn't even react to it. I was that shocked because it was the same lady that took me out for my first one. And she was almost apologetic. She went, I have only given you a 31. And I said, right now, that is like, I've just discovered the Holy Grail, right? And she said, so I do suggest, I know what you're going to suggest, and trust me, I will be doing everything I can to make sure that I carry on forward. Now, getting an ADI badge to me doesn't mean that, right, okay, I'm now an ADI and I can relax. No, you can't, because this job is consistently changing, along with all the clients that are consistently changing. We've got to know how to deal with everyone out there. It's a bit of a weird job, really, isn't it? I can't think of any other job that relates to it.
No, and it's wonderful. Because you've got that one-to-one experience with people, and it's rewarding. Yeah, no, I love this job. So I'm going to wrap us up, and I always ask everyone for a top tip before we finish. And so, I'm going to include you in this, and not just the trainers, because I think actually from your perspective, a top tip might be slightly different. So maybe based off your experience coming through. But yeah, what would your top tip for maybe a PDI coming into it, or any ADI or anything? What's your top tip for the people
Coming into the whole thing, or for the part 3?
Anything. whatever you want, as long as it's kind of driving instructor related.
Well, I'm gonna aim it at those poor PDIs that are absolutely shitting themselves right now, because I think that those are the ones that need a little bit of reassurance. And my top tip would be keep it simple, keep it natural. Don't try and force anything. Just go and do a lesson that you feel that that client needs. You know what I mean? Discuss that with your client. Make sure that you're both on the same page, and just go and deliver a lesson. Try to forget who's in the back. Keep that atmosphere going. Don't try and robotize anything, and don't try too hard, because I've been through that and I tried way too hard. Do you know what I mean? And it just bites you on the arse. It's not going to work. That's my top tip: is keep it simple, keep it natural.
Brilliant. I like it. Yeah, definitely. But I would only add to that is that before you do that, you have to have the ability to be natural. If that makes sense. The training, get the knowledge and the understanding first. But then, yeah, you're right. Don't once you know you're delivering the right sorts of lessons, that part of freestyle instruction won't be any different. It should just be that natural lesson. Absolutely. Yeah, do what you normally do. I say that to my learners as well. Be normal. Well, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story with everyone. I'm hoping everyone will enjoy the story. I certainly found it interesting. So, yeah, thank you very much for sharing your time.
You're welcome.
Inspire Instructor Podcast, where the learning never stops.